Everyone, I'm Rachel Blank, the founder of Allara Health, and I have a very special guest joining me today. Today, I'm sitting down with Maggie Sellers, the powerhouse behind Hot Smart Rich, one of the top business podcasts, where she teaches women how to take control of their financial futures. What makes the conversation even more powerful is Maggie is an investor in Allara, and through Allara was diagnosed with PCOS at 33. I am so excited to sit down with Maggie and talk about all things health, business, everything in between. Maggie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get started, can you share a little more about the philosophy of Hot Smart Rich? I think it's so important for women to hear.
Yeah, I think as women, we're told from a very early age that you have to be one thing, and it's very hard to break out of that almost like box you put yourself in because society tells you that that's what you should do. And Hot Smart Rich really started as a way for women to feel like they could express themselves, all sides of themselves, and bring their authentic self into what they were doing. So I started noticing, especially as like a consumer lover, businesses, that women control 85% of consumer spend, yet we get 2% of venture dollars. And I think it's because women, especially as they enter into the workplace, are told to put their consumer hat off and really just be this like kind of powerhouse, like strong woman. And I don't necessarily think that's actually what's going to get us the best result. So we started on social media. Now we have a top business podcast, and it's so fun to be able to do stuff like this with investments and portfolio companies.
Amazing. I absolutely love that. And as a female founder who has really, I think, found my personal experience as a woman to be such a big asset to my business, I completely agree. I think it's all about bringing the best of you from every angle into your business and into your life.
Totally. And especially if you're solving a women's health problem, like you want to be the consumer to know what we actually want, not somebody that has never experienced what we're going through to be building a solution for us that might not even work.
Yes, totally. Speaking of that, I know you were recently diagnosed with PCOS. I'd love to hear a little more about what that journey looked like for you.
It was actually kind of crazy because you messaged me on TikTok. Yeah. I immediately loved the company and went through, like any investor would, the diligence process of like going through what the actual customer journey is. Mm-hmm. And I documented my experience. I was filming it. And I remember my doctor at the time on Allara was like, you might want to turn the cameras off for this part once I had actually gotten my test results back. And she told me that I actually had all 3 signs of PCOS and couldn't believe that I had been misdiagnosed. So I was actually 31 at the time. Now I'm 33, so I've had it for 2 years. And it was honestly such an amazing thing because my whole life I was so overlooked by the healthcare system. There was periods in high school where I didn't have a period for like 3 years. I had crazy hormonal acne that no one could ever explain. I wasn't the typical looking PCOS patient where I was overweight and had unwanted hair growth on around my face, but like there were a lot of symptoms that never made sense. And so for me, I've actually really embraced labels because I think it's a way to really help yourself understand what is actually going on and how you can use that to your advantage or try to get to the root problem of things versus what was happening to me in the past was like getting put on Accutane for my hormonal acne. Never worked. It would always come back. And then you think about the side effects that did. So it was a really interesting way to be diagnosed, obviously, because I wasn't expecting it. But I felt such a sense of relief when I knew because it helped me really just like be able to read about it and consume content like this and really understand all of these other incredible women who also have something like this, which is 1 in 3 women in the States. Yet I think we're only now waking up to the conversation of how really prevalent it is.
Yeah, completely. And I think it's why it's so important that somebody like you documents their experience because I think it helps so much when you say, okay, I have all these symptoms and then I see somebody else going through it and like, like the aha moment of I might have something similar.
Totally. And it's interesting because my sister's also PCOS. There's only 2 children in our family and her symptoms are completely different from my symptoms. So again, unless there's more people talking about what it means for them, then we're not going to know all of these more untraditional cases, which is not what they say is like a typical PCOS looking person.
Yeah, same. I think that's partially similarly why it took me so long to get diagnosed because if you don't fit like the textbook mold or you can't see it from the outside, sometimes it can be so hard. But I think with health, it's obviously what's, going on inside that is so important. I'm curious, as a female founder, somebody who's been super successful in business, do you feel like in hindsight your symptoms or your PCOS affected you at all in your business life?
For sure. And even to this day, like I remember even when I first got my period when I was like very young, I would have to miss school because it was so severe. And I think often we as women don't realize like how many times our hormones are changing on a monthly basis. Like you are not the same person that you are every single day of the month because of what's going on inside of our bodies. And I'm 33 now, so I feel like there's been a lot of evolution of like education and people talking about this. But when I was growing up, like no one was talking about that. And we were expected to show up the exact same way every single day. And so even just like being in tune with what is going on in my body, truly, I have to be honest, like I did not know what like a luteal phase was before I was diagnosed with PCOS. I took it upon myself when I was like, wow, I have a fertility or a hormonal imbalance. Like I need to go and research like what is actually going on in my body and pay attention to this. Like it really helped me just even understand patterns of like what was actually happening inside of me and why I was better at conversations at certain points in the month or not. So I think like, of course, even just looking back and understanding like, okay, I had hormonal acne because of a hormonal imbalance, not because of the products that I was using or like the Accutane wasn't clearing it up. I think it would have taken away a lot of like the frustration. And everyone knows this. If you feel good, you're going to show up better. And when I had the worst of my cystic acne, it was when I was actually older. It was like 24 to 27. And those are your prime, like I'm now like really trying to evolve in the business world. And there were moments where like I wouldn't want to go to a networking event or go and meet like with the CEO of the company because I was so embarrassed of what my skin looked like. And if I had known what was going on, I wouldn't have felt so bad about myself. And so now whenever I have a hormonal breakout, I just know it's because like something's going on in my body and I'm less like hard on myself about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's such an important call out because I feel for so many women, it's like, oh, this is my fault or what did I do or what have I done wrong? And even getting some of like the shame and stigma around some of these conditions and symptoms, like reducing some of that shame and stigma around these is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there things that you found helpful or given that you're a super busy founder, CEO, podcast host, what are some things you do to help support your hormonal health?
So I used to be obsessed with cortisol firing workouts, I call them, like a Barry's boot camp. And what I realized was like I needed to really learn how to control the way I was getting exercise and movement that worked with my hormones. And so like there are periods, especially of the month now, where like that's okay, but that's not my everyday. And so like really monitoring like how I get movement in, taking as an example a long walk versus a shorter run, like that actually has made a huge difference for me. Little tips that I learned when I was like first talking to the medical team at Allara was like, don't have coffee on an empty stomach. Like make sure that there's something in your stomach so that like it actually is being absorbed in a totally different way. And then I think for me too, it's also just like tracking things properly. That was also something I wasn't doing. I if you had asked me 5 years ago, like when was the date of your last period, I would have zero idea. And now I'm like using these different tools and systems to really be able to figure out what is going on with my body and make sure that I'm just really in touch with it. I think for me, I travel so much. It can be really difficult to like eat properly on the road and get the proper things that I need to really fuel my body and nourish my system. But I think that I've been able to learn just different habits and different ways to like combine different types of foods to get the right amount of like fats, proteins, carbohydrates, and not be afraid of let's say carbohydrates like I was 6 years ago.
Yeah. That actually was a life-changing tip to me. Like you can have carbs, just have them with a protein and a fat. And then it'll be okay. You don't have to get rid of carbs.
Like my nutritionist at Allara, when I first worked with her, was like, I would do a banana before I had coffee. And she's like, that's actually not good. You need to layer a fat onto it. So this morning at 6:30, before I had my coffee, I go downstairs, I have a banana with peanut butter.
Yeah.
And it's like just a small, simple tip. And I think that's sometimes what I've learned about health is you're looking for this like huge awakening moment. And it's going to be like, you are fixed and cured. And that's just not reality. You are going to learn little tips. And it's like I always say with my therapist, I spend $400 an hour on therapy, and I probably walk away with one lesson, and it's so worth it for me because that compounds over time. And like the biggest secret to business success is truly like compounding, whether it's financially, whether it's your learning. And I think the same is so true with health. Like you're not going to have an overnight fix, but if you constantly are working at it and paying attention to it, that's when over a span of 2-3 years, like you notice a huge impact. I'm like in the healthiest weight of my life right now. My acne is almost completely cleared up, minus the odd flare up. Like I find I'm able to handle tougher situations and conversations a lot better, but that was not an overnight thing. It took 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. I think that's so important. I think so often in healthcare, we look for this like quick fix. Like, for example, everyone's obsessed with certain medications right now that like overnight can just fix things. But especially with your hormones, I think number one, understanding the root cause and then taking the time to help heal and work on that root cause is so important.
Well, it's so funny you say that because I obviously look at investing in the healthcare space. And one of the things that someone told me that's a mentor of mine was like, in America, we are so reactive with our healthcare. Like we don't really even address what is going on until we notice something. But like my dream state would be every single woman in America that's menstruating, so basically everyone over 13, is like, I want to take a more proactive view of my health. And like, how can I understand before there are problems, like what my system and my situation is like? And I think that is really what comes down to the difference between, you know, the blue zones of our world and like Eastern medicine versus Western medicine is we are so reactive versus being proactive. And I just think if we take it upon ourselves to like use the tools and technology like Allara or the supplements out there to really try to like heal our bodies before it gets to a breaking point, we will have a healthier America.
Yeah. It's like you took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
That's why I started Allara.
Investor.
Yeah. I'd actually love to dive a little more into that. So as you mentioned, a few years ago, I saw this girl on TikTok who I was like, she really is just incredible talking about consumer investing and business. And I reached out and you ended up investing in Allara. And I'd love to hear a little more about what made you decide to invest.
Well, there's a few reasons why I usually invest in things. So the one big one is like, am I personally passionate about this? And like, I can get behind it and do stuff like this where it's like, I can use my personal experience to help the company grow because I'm not going to be your biggest check, but like I can add something that is different than a Google Ventures, right? I secondly look at like how big the market is and seeing like 1 in 3 women in America have a hormonal imbalance. That's a huge TAM that we can go and solve and hopefully have a large exit. The third is really the founder, and that's you. And even just the way that like you messaged me on TikTok, like you would be shocked at how many people translate that to Instagram. And if my biggest platform is TikTok, so it was just like those little things that I could pick up on. And I think you were the second company I had ever invested off of TikTok from. And once I had been brought into the world of Allara, I really understood what we were trying to do and trying to solve. And for me, it really goes back to what I was saying about being proactive versus being reactive. Like as someone who was just given Accutane and given Adderall for my ADHD and being given these prescriptions, like I knew that when I was entering into my late 20s, early 30s, I wanted to set my body up for success to bring life into this world. And that is not necessarily pumping your system with just all of these medications. That might be part of your healthcare journey, but it shouldn't be the only thing. And especially someone that emigrated from Canada, like I felt really disjointed within the medical system when I first moved here. I find it bizarre, this whole idea of like networks and like being in and out of network. And I felt like Allara was really this place where you could go and just be like heard and listened to for the first time. And so it was a combination of everything. Like, of course, there's the investing principles that I look at, but then I think what I really go for at companies that I invested in at that stage is like, am I personally passionate about it? Do I believe in the founder? Do they have a good network that they're going to be able to go and build this? And everything just like clicked every single box for me.
Oh, I love to hear that.
Yeah.
As an investor, how are you thinking kind of more broadly about trends or investing in, I guess, specifically in women's health, but also just in healthcare more broadly?
I think right now, and this is what I love about being able to invest my own money as well, is like we are so focused. And I say we because my partner and I also, we are looking for things that where it's like our stage of life. So like the next thing on our mind is fertility. And like I don't know what that journey is going to be like for me. And instead of like chasing trends, I really look for things that just like personally I want to see in the world that don't currently exist. So like proper testing with that isn't scary, or like making you go into a doctor's office. I think for me, VCs or investors that say that they can like predict the future, I think you discover the future with people building really interesting products. And it's been interesting because I think women's health obviously is completely underfunded, like has only really been paid attention to recently. But what I'm looking for, and this is a thesis that I think when the iPhone first came out, there's ripple effects, right? Coinbase, Lyft, Airbnb, these are all billion-dollar companies that were based off of the infrastructure of the iPhone, having a computer in your pocket. The next wave, I think of like unicorns or decacorns, is going to be the ripple effects of AI. So like, who are the companies that are leveraging that technology to solve real problems? And those are just really interesting to me. And I don't think that I have a silver ball I can look in and be like, oh, this is what's going to happen. But I think if you use your personal experience of real problems and pain points, and for me, that just happens to be like fertility that's on my mind for the next, let's say like 2 to 5 years, IVF, egg freezing, like things like that. That is what I'm personally interested in funding. And I think, again, like my value is really just being able to come at it from a consumer's perspective and have a lot of fun with companies where it's like, how can we collaborate in a way that's mutually beneficial? Because it's also my experience that I'm bringing to the table, not just money.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. And I know, at least for me as a founder, I really relate to that because building something out of my own personal experience has been so hugely helpful to me, both because it makes me more passionate about what we're doing because I know how much something like Allara needs to exist, but also I think it just allows me to understand the problem, build the business in a way that I just wouldn't be able to do if I didn't have the experience.
For sure. I think you look at like even just the examples of Rode, right? It was like started by a female, and like there's a reason why every single thing that they've done has hit, because the consumer is the female. And I think if there was a man, and I'm very pro man, if there was a man building Allara, I don't know if I would have had the same sense of like, this is something I have to get behind, because biologically, like men will never experience what women do. So I think it's also just being able to build something that we really know is needed. And it's crazy because especially when I first invested, like there were so many HSR community members that were like, I literally like think of you and Allara in the same way because you were so vocal about it. And that to me is so powerful, where it's like, okay, that is how we start to see this huge trend change where like more women are getting money and like more women are even in tune to what's going on in their bodies and their business. Like that is really the mission of HSR. And so it's so exciting to see this like come to fruition years later.
Yeah, it's been such an incredible journey for both of us.
Yeah. Just seeing like the evolution and now it's like even you telling me this morning that there's like a new office and there's 40 people and there's like, it's just so cool when you get to be a part of something so early and you see it. It's just wild.
Yeah. Well, we've been very lucky to have you on the journey. Okay, let me see. I think I just have a few more. Okay. Talking a little more about Hot Smart Rich, how do your Hot Smart Rich principles apply to women and their health decisions?
I think it's really interesting when people want me to like rip apart HSR, Hot Smart Rich, into like hot, smart, and rich. And I really struggle with that because it is a mentality. It is a mission. It is really to have women be and feel and look their best self. So there isn't like, oh, you need to do this to be hot or to have like this for your wellness routine, or you need to do this with, you know, I'm not a personal finance expert. Like what I talk about when it relates to rich is like the mentality that people have towards money and like really democratizing all of the different things that I've seen successful business people do. And so I think HSR is really a mentality of like, whether you call it main character energy or like being like betting on yourself, that is, if I were to summarize HSR, it is to bet on yourself. It is to invest in yourself, in your wellness, in your health, in your looks, into your routines, like into your business. And as it relates to women's health, I think that's just a part of it, right? I think for me, HSR is really that guiding principle to like, if I were to die tomorrow, I would be happy with the day I had before because it was like putting hot, smart, rich energy into everything, if that makes sense. So I find it hard to describe sometimes when like a reporter will come to me and be like, describe what it means to be hot. And I'm like, I'm not this TikToker that's like hot moms, like, you know, like that comedy. I'm like, it's almost the same mentality of being smart, being rich. It's just to empower women to like go after whatever they want and go full force at it. And whether that's your health or that's your, business, like it's really all encompassing of that mentality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think like so many things, it's not about putting, women or pieces into little boxes, but like really about the full picture.
Yeah, like I always find it so funny because like the whole mission of HSR is like, it's not to be put in a box.
Yeah.
It's to be able to be a founder that's raised however much venture capital money and post a bathing suit photo and be like, I can have $1 billion exit just like Hailey Bieber did. Like that was really where I was like, what is this disconnect? Like these celebrities are able to do and say whatever they want, yet like they are building $1 billion companies. But like, why is it that the woman who's like working at a corporate venture fund or at Allara can't be respected, even if she has a life outside of work? And by the way, bring that to work so that like we can build for that consumer. When you're building a consumer profile, even you're like describing your ideal customer and you talk about things like where she travels, where she goes for coffee, like what her workout is like. And it's like, why do we then tell women that are working at the company that like don't bring that into the company?
Yeah, completely. And again, I think it makes you show up better, and especially in a consumer business, because you really are being that consumer, right? And you're living it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is a piece of advice that you have for women who are maybe struggling with their health or their hormone health?
Keep a journal. Like a very tactical one is I feel like it's so easy to forget things and like to really not be able to go back and identify. So whether it's like writing bullet points into your phone or it's literally writing a journal entry of like how you feel every single day and just being really in touch with what your body is telling you. I think we live in such a fast-paced world, and like being able to slow down at the end or the morning of the day and really just like write out how you feel. I don't believe necessarily in like the people who log every single meal and like log their steps every single day. And like that's just unrealistic. And so I think it's about just developing a really simple habit where in my calendar, actually, I have something called a health diary that's just like an all-day task. And at the end of the day, I write down whatever I can. And sometimes that's like how many steps I got, what I ate, if I went to the bathroom, like how I felt emotionally. And that has been so helpful to go back and identify like what is actually going on with me. And then the really interesting thing with AI is like I'll put those health diaries like into ChatGPT and like ask to summarize what this month was like compared to the previous month, which is just crazy to be able to do.
Yeah. I think this is such a good tactical piece of advice, because especially if you're feeling, dismissed, or you feel like you're having these symptoms that don't make sense, being able to point to like, here's the history of what's been happening is such a valuable tool to have.
Well, and I don't think that like doctors and nutritionists and functional health providers will ever become obsolete. I think that they will leverage the tools of AI. But like the way that I would handle it as an example is like if you go to a doctor and you can't describe what's going on, how are they ever going to be able to help you, right? But if you come prepared to that meeting like it was a business meeting or an interview, you're going to be able to get to the result a lot faster. So like how can you take your own health into your own hands and then leverage something like an Allara doctor or nutritionist to be like, okay, I need you to help me put this together. But I don't think that it's one or the other. I think that you need to be your best advocate no matter what your solution is, and then being able to like take the experts that you need along with you on the journey. It's not an either or.
Yeah, that's such good advice.
Thank you.
Maggie, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us what is next for Hot Smart Rich?
Oh my gosh, there's actually a lot coming, which is really exciting. Like last week, we actually had like 80 girls from Australia self-regulate and organize like an HSR meetup. So we're trying to like roll out a program like a college ambassador program for Hot Smart Rich Angels that can like really coordinate all of these like-minded women in different cities. So like they don't have to just wait for me to throw events, which I'm just so excited about. Obviously, the podcast today while we're recording, it's number 56 in the world, which is amazing. So please listen to that. And then there's just like some really cool stuff coming out because we're finally able to start hiring. And I have to announce, I took a little break from investing just based on bandwidth, but we are looking to deploy at least 150 grand angel checks. So probably like 25K checks, maybe like 4 to 5 of them this year. So if you are raising money at a seed or a Series A level, would love to have you pitch us. And then we are going back into our syndicate investing as well, which is more like $500,000 checks into Series A companies. So definitely want to get my investing bug back on. And I'm just really excited about everything and seeing these companies grow. And the one thing I will say about Allara is like, it's so cool to see the companies not need you anymore, you know? Like I always say the companies you don't have to worry about are the ones that are going to be the winners. Whereas like it's so cool to see the evolution of Allara and everything you guys have done. And I'm excited to like jump back in ways I can help, but also like knowing that it's not like it's such a bigger machine now that
so
it's
much
like
bigger than 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's just really cool to see.
It's crazy. Well, I can vouch for everyone that Maggie's an amazing investor. So if you are raising, reach out.
Yes.
If you want to learn more, you can check out Hot Smart Rich on major podcast platforms and follow Hot Smart Rich or Maggie Sellers on major social media. And you can follow Allara Health on all socials as well.
Bye, guys.